exciting to me to see the amount of momentum that companies can get with a little veteran horsepower behind them. Because what I've noticed about Russ Barnes is he always gives me 3 or 4 different options on where to go, and otherwise I wouldn't have thought that way. So that's been really refreshing. And Gabriel Ruiz, part of the reason I reached out to you is when I got the email from you that we were having conversations with the people that are in your hive, I just thought this is the kind of mentorship that everybody's looking for, who's watching out for me. And I can remember seeing you at ITSEC one year, and I was able to grab you for a minute. You sat down and we had like a 20-minute conversation talking about the importance of bringing other people along. So we're really glad that you're on today. I would say we may as well get started. Russ will be adding people as they come along. But anyway, this is Jenny Clark. I created Freedom Friday because we had our GovCon Summit in Tampa in March. Great turnout with a lot of small businesses, many of whom are veteran owned, and looking for answers in the federal contracting market on how do I grow my business. They first need to figure out how to get revenue. They need some strategy. They need to have a business first. That's where Russ helps them. Eventually down the road, I would get involved with them on what I call financial logistics, because if you start getting work and you know what to do, then you've got to figure out how the math of all that works, and that's my specialty. So today we've got with us Gabriel Ruiz, who has advanced IT concepts. And Gabe, what I'd love for you to do is spend about 10, 15 minutes talking about how you got started, what you're doing, and really want you to talk about what you're doing with your hive. So how about I turn it over to you, Gabe, and let you just chat for a while.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Jenny. I spent 26 years in the Army. My background is computer science, technology. I spent 19 years in the acquisition course. So I was blessed with the ability, the opportunity to learn about Army contracting, proposals. You know, my last job was Lieutenant Colonel PM running a $2.6 billion contract, right? The largest ACAT-3 contract program in the Army. And I worked with the big guys like Lucent and GDIT and others, and small businesses as well. So I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly when it came to proposals, to delivering solutions, and the others. I saw, as I mentioned earlier, as I was transitioning to company, consulting, and ended up doing consulting for business development, technology insertion, getting systems certified to come into the Army, to the DoD platform, right? Mostly information technology, security solutions, and the like. And I did that for 4 years. I was blessed to work with CDW as well, you know, a multi-billion-dollar reseller. So I learned the reselling part of the business. So my first gig, besides consulting, came as a $1 million sale to P.O. Strike here in Orlando for Cisco gear. And I bumped that by 5%, and I made like $195,000. I said, oh my God, you know, that's twice what I was making in the Army as a lieutenant colonel on a single transaction, right? I said, there's something in here, right? So then I started doing equipment reselling, and then the Army came and said, hey, can you do some integration of wireless systems? Sure. So we started doing integration. Hey, can you do the training? Sure. Can you do the sustainment? Of course. Hey, can you put full-time people at Fort Gordon, Georgia? Why not, right? So key to our success, especially when we started, was flexibility, right? And when I said flexibility, is looking at multiple things, diversifying. You have to diversify not only in what you offer. Now we're offering cybersecurity solutions, still focused on information technology, but we're doing medical simulation. We're doing combat training centers. We're deploying medical solutions at the NATO headquarters. We're down in Uruguay, Germany, Korea, Belgium, right? So we're diversifying across the offerings that we have. So we're doing logistics, full logistics, right? We're shipping things worldwide, complying with ITARs. You know, we have a potential $100 million opportunity in Saudi Arabia, right, as a prime. So, you know, again, diversify with what you offer, diversify with the type of customers you have and diversify across the different locations, right? So something else that made us successful was a big lessons that we learned, right? And that's part of what we, I put in place the Hive to have others learn the lessons through us, not through themselves, right? So about 4 or 5 years into when we got started, we were project-based, right? Meaning we'll go and do a project and be done with it, right? So sequestration hit, right? So we went from about $7 million to 2, right? And we went from about $1 million, give or take 1.2, 1.5 to $1 million losses, right? Overnight. So coming out of that, we learned something, right? Number one, we were ready for that hit. We had no debt, we had money in the bank, right? And we were able to survive. Most companies will have closed doors, right? So we learned a big lesson. The other lesson that we learned out of that was to set up multi-year contracts, right? The days of the project-based type opportunities were over, right? So that was another lesson. So soon after that, we decided to pursue our first competed contract. By then we were set up as an 8A. So we decided to chase our first contract. And even though we won it, it was LPTA, they awarded to somebody else, right? We protested once, protested twice, protested a third time, and then we were completely set aside, right? So but what we learned there was that was an $8 million opportunity. From there, we went to a $45 million opportunity. We went from nothing competed to $8 million to $45 million. Service disabled effort, we won it. That was fully competed, right? And then we went for a $70 million and an $80 million. And recently, December of last year, we submitted a prime proposal for $1 billion contract, right? Wow. So what I'm telling you guys is that we spend about the same amount of money, effort, mind melting for an $8 million to a $45 million to a $70 million to $1 billion contracts, right? So the lessons in here are to find the right people to help you achieve those goals, right? So, hey, let's go after this opportunity, right? We have to invest for that $1 billion effort almost $1.5–2 million over the last 18 months prior to. We had to hire other people, we had to hire consultants, we had to open an office in Arizona, we have to staff that office, right? But again, everything in preparation for that $1 billion opportunity that if we win as a prime, is going to change the face of this company forever, right? So find the right people. Number 2 is do your homework, right? Do your homework. Who are your customers? What are they needing? And then number 3 is focus on the short, the mid, and the long-term, opportunities, and the large, the medium, and the smalls, right? So that's what's also helped us with some of this. I want to pause for a second, Jenny, so if I can get any questions from the audience.
Well, I have definitely got some questions. I think what's so important about what you're talking about is diversification. I've talked to other companies that say diversification is important, but you should still only try to go after 2 or 3 different agencies because the agencies have such different styles and different decision-making processes. But what I loved about it is you started one place and realized where some of the foundation was. And with this $1 billion contract you're going after, whether you win it or not, you're going to be prepared for the next one that comes along. How do you come up with the way that how do you prioritize this spending?
So I learned to trust my people, right? And so when you hire the right people to do your business development, for example, these are the guys that have done it before, right? So for example, I hired a team that had won this contract for other companies twice before. So they had 100% success rate, right? They knew what the customer were looking for, exactly what they were looking for on this contract, right? We have been supporting this customer ourselves for about 7 years, right? This customer used to support me when I was a PM, right? So I know their business extremely well, right? So yes, while we're looking at diversification, we still stay true to our core competencies, right? Information technology, security, innovation, all these things that make DoD, requirements so unique, and that's where we shine, right? So along with that, we're chasing $180 million opportunities at Fort Hood, for example. We formed a Super 8A joint venture, right, with a Hawaiian American company to give us that $22 million from the $4 million as an 8A. Now we're getting to a 22 mil. We're already locking our first opportunity and potentially another one with the Navy, right? So what I tell people, my younger CEOs is key to success, number one, is you have to identify a need. Second, you have to identify how are you going to deliver that need, right? Meaning the contract vehicle, right? And then third, you have to have the ability to deliver that need and the ability to have a successful proposal process, right? That is going to get you there, right? That's three. Equally as important, it's the ability to shape the solicitation before it comes out. That's what alliances and partnership with the small business offices from each one of these organizations is key, right? So we know the small business folks, we talk to them, they did the sources saw, the request for information, we responded, we encourage other small businesses to respond, and we show them that small businesses can do the job, right? Because it's not every single small business that can be a prime for $1 billion contract competing with working with GDIT and the likes, right? We're partners with GDIT, they're sub to us, we're sub to them, but they're one of the primes, right? So we're going against GDIT for one of 3, maybe 5 slots in this contract, and that's it, right? So again, small, medium, large, short, mid, and long-term strategy from a proposal development perspective will help you prioritize and then do the budgets, right? Like, okay, do I have $100,000 for this, or do I spend 150 at ITSEC, you know, like we normally do? We have a 20 by 20 booth. We have the entire team in there. That's $150,000 investment every time we go to ITSEC, right? So we have to make those decisions.
Well, those are some tough calls, because it's when I've talked to other small businesses about, are you ready to go to the next step? They'll all say, I want to prime, but they haven't thought about the amount of process you had to put in place to be able to run, and I think of it in terms of multiple giant spreadsheets. So I think that's really important. The other thing is, you know, you mentioned Fort Hood, and I know a lot that you've got in Orlando area. Would you say there's 3 or 4 geographic areas where you're putting more focus, or are you just picking up work all over?
No, so yeah, you have to focus, right? So our main focus is Orlando, PO Stri, right? Why? Because most of my team was part of PO Stri. I call Orlando home. I was assigned to PO Stri before my last assignment with POEIS up in Virginia. So we know that industry, right? We know modern and simulation really, really well. So most of our focus is here in Orlando with PO Stri and others. But here locally, we're also expanding, right? With not with as well. We have contracts and others, right? We even have a contract with Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, with GOA, right? So that's a separate contract. So Orlando is definitely our main focus. We have about 6 or 7 contracts at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. We have contracts with the Intel School. We have contract with NITCOM, the Network Enterprise Command. We have contracts with the Information Systems Engineering Command, right? So we have contracts in there. And now Fort Hood, because I spent 7 years at Fort Hood, I know the mission, so do my team. So in any case, we're focusing at Fort Hood and also Fort Gordon cyber, right? We're also focusing on other agencies, for example, up in Washington, now overseas, right? Foreign military sales. We've been chasing some work in Southwest Asia for the last 10 years, right? And finally, right, that's another key to success. Don't give up. Persistence, you know, you're here 1,000 times. And it's funny, when I met with the foreign military sales folks, they say, hey, Gabe, finally, right? Meaning they knew I've been chasing an opportunity for at least 10 years, right? And that was, you know, part of an alliance with another company, came through the small business, the UCF incubator. By the way, they were the ones that referred that company to us and led into this potentially $100 million opportunity, right? That's another lesson, right, Jenny, for, you know, everybody that's listening and the Hive is you have to identify local resources that in most cases are free to you, right? And leverage them the Small Business Development Center, the incubator for the local university, the PTAC, the associations, right? Whatever it is out there in the industry, the AFCIAs of the world, right? All these agencies, right? AUSA, all these organizations are networking opportunity for you to meet people. When this company came from UAE to the US looking for a partner, the UCF incubator told them, I have the perfect company for you, and they sent them to us, right? And again, out of the blue, we're getting this phenomenal opportunity thanks to those relationships and our proven capability to delivering solutions. So.
Well, you're so right about having the relationship so that people know to call you, and that you've delivered that type of stuff before. You know, I think of Carol Ann Dykes at the USCF incubator, and then Steve South and the folks at the Orlando PTAC. And there's so many resources like that, but it's the doing your homework that's really sticking with it that's really made a big difference in what you're doing. Tell us a little bit, if you would, Gabe, about your hive. And Russ, you had a question.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question before you go to the hive? But I definitely want to hear about the hive. You were 8A certified. I'm assuming you graduated from that program. Can you give us just a couple of minutes on what that experience was like and how it helped you?
Yes, so luckily for us, we're still an 8A, believe it or not. So what happened was I waited about 6 years before we even applied for the 8A, which is key. 70% or more of the 8As never get a federal contract because they're not ready. They don't have the credit lines or the past performance or the history or the ability to deliver anything, right? So they waste a lot of time. We waited because I learned that when I was in the Army, right? How to go and use 8As, right? For us, the 8A was and continues to be key to our success. No doubt about it, right? Have we been successful without the 8A? Yes. Did the 8A make it a lot easier? Definitely, right? Because especially in the initial years, we started getting direct contracts, right? It's based on who you know, because, you know, when you're a company of one, it's who you know, right? So we got a multi-million-dollar contract for the VA when we were a company of 4. Right? And because this is how we went, the conversation came. The contracting officer came by and he said, hey, we know you are not a logistics company, but you know cost, performance, and schedule. You are a former Army PM, and we trust you. Can you help us? Put it on the table. You know, 9 days later or whatever, we had our first contract, right? So, so the 8A is key to success. But what we learned is that you have to leverage those contracts, those opportunities to deliver, to gain that past performance, to gain the knowledge, right? Like, for example, getting cost plus contract to get your DCAA accounting system in place. Secret security clearance. It took us 9 years to get our first TS contract. Now we're prime on multiple TS SCI contracts, right? So now the proposal phase, right? I mentioned, you know, we're competing against the big boys, right? A 45 million, 70 million, 180 million, $1 billion proposal, fully competed. You cannot do that unless you use the program. Others, I'm going to bring up in this 8A JV, regular 8A JVs, super 8A JVs, and other, right? So my advice to companies that can be 8As are take your time, be prepared, and leverage that. And when the time comes, then apply for and get the 8A. By the time that we got ours, we already have past performance. We have multi-million-dollar credit lines. You know, we could stand on our own, right? And that's how we were able to get this contract, you know, after, you know. And now, as we transition, we have 1 more year. May of 2021 is when we exit the 8A because we have been carefully looking at the next code so we do not graduate early, right? That's a strategy. You have to pick the right next code and the strike. You cannot go after everything. And that has to be carefully coordinated, because if you graduate early, then you're host. You can make a lot of money.